The year is 1962. The world is locked in a tense standoff. Two superpowers, armed with nuclear weapons, glare at each other across the globe. In this powder keg of tension, a tiny island nation becomes the focal point of global anxiety. Cuba, led by the fiery Fidel Castro, becomes a pawn in this terrifying game. Soviet missiles capable of carrying nuclear payloads are being installed in Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. The United States stares down a chilling reality. Nuclear annihilation is a tangible threat, closer than ever before. President John F. Kennedy and his advisors huddle, the weight of the world on their shoulders. Every tick of the clock seems to echo the impending doom. The world holds its breath. The fate of humanity hangs precariously in the balance. Newspapers scream headlines of impending war, fueling public fear and uncertainty. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a visceral, heart-stopping moment in human history where the fragility of peace was laid bare. The discovery of the Soviet missiles was no accident. U.S. spy planes equipped with high-resolution cameras captured images of the missile sites under construction. The grainy photographs, analyzed by intelligence experts, confirmed the worst fears. The Soviet Union, led by Nikita Khrushchev, had made a bold and dangerous move. Kennedy assembles a group of advisors, the Executive Committee of the National Security Council, or EXCOM. The room crackles with tension as military leaders, diplomats, and politicians debate the best course of action. Options are laid out: a full-scale invasion of Cuba, surgical airstrikes on the missile sites, or a naval blockade to prevent further Soviet shipments. Each option carries its own risks, its own potential for catastrophic escalation. Kennedy, in a televised address, announces the discovery of the missiles and declares a naval quarantine of Cuba. He demands the removal of the missiles and warns of severe consequences if his demands are not met. For 13 agonizing days, the world teeters on the brink. The fate of millions, perhaps billions, hangs in the balance as the two superpowers engage in a deadly game of chicken. Behind the closed doors of power, individuals grappled with the enormity of the situation. Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General and the President's brother, worked tirelessly behind the scenes to find a peaceful resolution. His memoirs paint a vivid picture of the fear and uncertainty that gripped the White House. On the Soviet side, Valery Legasov, a prominent Soviet scientist, provided chilling insights into the Kremlin's thinking. The crisis also had a profound impact on ordinary citizens, both in the United States and around the world. In the U.S., families prepared for the worst, stocking up on supplies, making plans for evacuation. Schools conducted duck and cover drills, a grim reminder of the ever-present nuclear threat. These personal stories provide a human face to the crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a masterclass in brinkmanship, a dangerous game of political chicken where each side pushed the other to the edge, hoping the other would blink first. Kennedy's decision to impose a naval blockade, a move considered an act of war under international law, was a calculated risk. Khrushchev, facing pressure from both within the Kremlin and from his own military commanders, had to weigh his options carefully. The world watched as Soviet ships approached the quarantine line established by the U.S. Navy. Behind the scenes, however, secret negotiations were taking place. Robert Kennedy met with Soviet Ambassador Anatoly Dobrinin, seeking a way out of the impasse. Messages were exchanged between Kennedy and Khrushchev, each leader trying to gauge the other's intentions, their willingness to compromise. Yet, in a moment of extraordinary restraint, both sides pulled back from the brink. What if Khrushchev had refused to back down? What if the Soviet ships had challenged the U.S. blockade? What if that nuclear torpedo had been launched? The Cuban Missile Crisis, in many ways, was a game of chance, a roll of the dice that could have easily gone the other way. Some historians believe that a full-scale nuclear war was unlikely, that both sides understood the catastrophic consequences of such a conflict. Others argue that the risk of miscalculation, of human error or technical malfunction was very real. Imagine a world where the missiles in Cuba remained, a constant threat to the United States. Imagine the fear and uncertainty that would have gripped the American people, the constant specter of nuclear annihilation hanging over their heads. The Cuban Missile Crisis serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace, the ever-present danger of nuclear weapons. The Cuban Missile Crisis, despite its terrifying proximity to nuclear war, had a profound impact on international relations. It ushered in an era of détente, a thawing of relations between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both sides, shaken by the experience, recognized the need for communication, for dialogue, for ways to prevent such a crisis from happening again. The crisis also led to the establishment of a hotline between Washington and Moscow, a direct line of communication between the leaders of the two superpowers. This hotline, still in operation today, was designed to prevent misunderstandings, to allow for quick and direct communication in times of crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis also highlighted the importance of diplomacy, of finding peaceful solutions to even the most intractable conflicts. The events of October 1962 should serve as a stark reminder to future generations of the importance of diplomacy, of communication, of the need to find peaceful solutions to conflict. It is a lesson we must never forget.